Yes, we're talking about the Caird Engineering Works property on the intersection of Highway 12 and Montana Avenue. And I'm Chris Shove. I'm the Executive Director of the Montana Business Assistance Connection. And we wanted to take this opportunity to tell the public about the plans for the Caird Engineering property. We'll call it Caird. And then also to get the opinions of the local neighborhood association about this potential project. So what MBAC has proposed to do is to buy the Caird property, demolish all the buildings, and go ahead and do an environmental cleanup based on a study that was done by the Tetra Tech company. It's an international engineering firm. They did an extensive analysis of the site and what it would take to go ahead and clean up the Caird property. So what our plan is that we can get a grant to do the brownfield cleanup. We're very certain of that. And then also we have funds in the Helena revolving loan fund of more than $500,000 that we could use to purchase the property. And to do that, the Helena City Commission is going to do a vote on February 24th to say yes or no that the Montana Business Connection can use the Helena revolving loan fund to go ahead and buy the Caird property, and then we'll go ahead and do the cleanup. Once, if things go on time, the Caird property should be totally cleaned up by October of this year. And for the first time in 65 years, people that are driving in to Helena, Montana from the interstate on Highway 12 will be able to see the state capitol building. Because as you probably know, if you drive on Montana Avenue, the Caird Engineering Works building obscures the state capitol building until you go past that particular property. So that's the plan. And what I'd like to do is turn now to the guests today to talk about their feelings about the project. And they are Chuck Ball and Rose Casey, who are residents of the local neighborhood and also referred to as the Midtown District or the Ward 6 District. So tell me, what has the Caird property been to the neighborhood for the past several years? And what do you think the proposal?
The proposal is wonderful. I've lived in that neighborhood for over 35 years in the same house. And the neighborhood, once you're in it, is a remarkable neighborhood to the north and south of the tracks. Full of a lot of really wonderful, homey houses that you think of from the 50s. But they have been really started to be kept up by a lot of new homeowners in the last decade. But the Caird property has always been a forbidding presence, entryway that doesn't speak well for the neighborhood. And it's past its time, and it's time to have something there that is a welcoming part to our neighborhood, but also a shining gem for the railroad business district that's right there by the railroad tracks.
And Chuck, what do you think?
You know, I think Rose hit it on the head. Our ward area, the 6th ward, I think it's cleaning up. And as you can see, this is kind of an eyesore. And it's the most beneficial thing to get rid of it, so when people come to our community, they see something besides an old building that's really not being utilized as well as it should be. And that's a great way to do it. And MBAC I think they're right on board and hitting the hammer on the head to clean it up and get something else in there. And economic development is what I'd like to see. And I think 6th Ward would like to see it also.
So I understand that you guys have been meeting about this, your membership. And so do they generally feel the same way? And what are their feelings about it?
Well, yes. Our neighborhood association is about 10 years old now. And we did a lot of extensive meetings and everything several years ago to see what people wanted. Hardly anyone was in favor of anything residential. It did not seem like a good fit, and everyone has been wanting something with an economic boost to the neighborhood, and also just something proud that when you're driving through town that you would see there. So the neighborhood has always been behind what it is that you're now kind of bringing to the point of reality. It just seems like a dream, really. So it's very exciting. The neighborhood is very much behind you, and I can tell you that the business owners right there by the Caird property would be thrilled, because this is something that a couple of years ago they were very much behind what it is you're trying to do, but we couldn't make it happen.
And Chuck, go ahead. Go ahead.
I got another business acquaintance who has a business within a block of that area, and he's very much in favor of this. And I understand the uphill battle that taking this back to a residential area is just way too costly, and MBAC's got the right idea. I don't know if people understand that the monies that you have acquired and that you will use only go to the point of back to commercial use of originally what it is. There's no reason why we should have a residence in there. It's a tough intersection. As busy as it is, it's not favorable, I don't believe, to residential. But it is favorable to a small business. It would bring economic development to Helena, and I think that's what we really need.
So for our audience, what Chuck and Rose are talking about is that in this study that was done by Tetra Tech in the environmental assessment of the Caird property, they came up with two scenarios. One scenario was to clean up the property in accordance with the requirements of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for commercial use. And that cost about $281,000. Another option was to go ahead and clean up the property for future residential use, and that would cost over $500,000. So it's a significant price difference. The other thing that MBAC did to clarify the situation is we had an appraisal done on the property a few months ago, and we came out, or the appraisal came out, with what's the maximum value of that property the way it's currently zoned. Right now it's zoned business neighborhood, and you can have residential and commercial. You can have 100% of the land as commercial or 60% of the land as residential. But the appraised value is like the upper limit, it's the ceiling. And with the options that Tetra Tech gave to us, $281,000 to clean it up for commercial use, that was within the appraised value. But trying to clean it up for a residential purpose would add another $250,000, which would be beyond the budget that MBAC has to clean up the property, and we wouldn't be able to do it. So you guys live there, and you talked just a little bit about the Caird as a residential area or Caird as a business area. So what do you think is really what's good for that area, and why?
I got to believe it's some type of a small business that could employ in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 people, where it would bring some economic development there. I believe that residential would be a tough sell to anybody personally. I just don't see residents on the busiest street in Montana. And I believe it's the busiest street. I know it's the busiest street in Helena, and I believe it's the busiest street in Montana, or one of the busiest streets. And for people to be in and out of there, that could be dangerous, where I think that the whole win-win situation would be to make it nicer looking, to have people interested in, when they go through Helena, to see something beautiful to look at, and a development such as that could be perfect.
Rose?
Well, I like to dream big, and I would like to see this piece of property be something that cause connections to happen, possibly with Stewart Homes folks and possible jobs, or some sort of connection with the university. Something that would spur better business development in the Railroad Business District. And you know, and with Boeing coming in, there might be some possibilities for commercial development there with ties that are just on the edge. But I do see this as the tipping point for our the branding or rebranding of our neighborhood. something that would just, really, we don't even know what the limits are going to be once this gets started. It's just going to open up all sorts of possibilities that I don't think any of us are seeing right now.
And just so the audience knows, of course, in the Montana Business Connection MBAC's membership and board of directors, there was discussion about Caird, and the conclusion that we came to was the goal of MBAC should be to clean up the property, and that's it, full stop. Clean up the property, and then have the community discussion about what should occur later on, and also what business investment might take place there. Looking at the history of the development or the attempts to redevelop the property, the discussion about what the property should be stopped the discussion to clean up the property. It was kind of like the cart was before the horse. So that's why we're at MBAC. We're just focused on let's clean up the property so the private sector and the citizens can get together, and then there could be a discussion about what could potentially develop on that particular piece of property. But Rose brought up an interesting point that how this potential property, once it's gone and cleaned up, what kind of impact it might have on the neighborhood. So you want to speculate a little bit about that?
Well, one thing I think is that our neighborhood has been overlooked for tourism on the whole railroad area. There are folks that come from all over the world. They're railroad aficionados. They come because we are one of the few spots in the United States, if not the only one, where they have helper engines that go over the... I see people all the time out there with their fancy cameras, and there is a tourism possibility that we haven't tapped into. So I can imagine that, I've always imagined that there could also be a railroad museum or something connected. It wouldn't have to just strictly be all business. If there was a piece there that we could tie into tourism, that would really be beneficial. So that isn't my expertise. All I can tell you is that that neighborhood could really have a shining center to it, which would be that railroad business district.
So what do you think, Chuck?
I think Rose just hit it on the head too. You know, we are an old neighborhood, and it's tough to get a pride part of your neighborhood. And if we were to be behind this, and if we were part of the solution of getting this through, that we could put something on our shining star, if you want to put our little 6th ward as a shining star of Helena. But what a proud thing that could be for the 6th ward, is to have something beautiful right there in that corner, rather than what everybody looks over every time they go through that intersection.
You know, that's an interesting point about looking over the site. I'm new to Helena and new to Montana, and I moved here late last year in August, and I was really kind of shocked driving into the state capitol and seeing the Caird building, and it was really pretty obvious to me. But I think that Chuck makes a point, though. A lot of people have gotten used to it. It's been there since 1950, so it's kind of just grown old in place. The other thing that I just wanted to mention is that we did look at the Montana Department of Transportation average daily traffic counts for that intersection, and Chuck was right. That is the busiest intersection in Helena. It's over 40,000 cars a day go by there, and that's one of the reasons why we thought it would be an ideal commercial spot. So are there any other kinds of ideas or thoughts about what could further develop, not on Caird, but I'm talking about in the ward area? You were talking about the railroad district, and I'm new here and I don't know much about all of that. And you were talking about there's some buildings in that area that are really quite interesting and historic.
Well, the railroad building itself, which is not, and Billings have done to turn their railroad buildings with great architecture into community centers or restaurants. It's really fun to spend time there. And I can imagine a trolley car coming down from the Capitol straight down Roberts Street and then out to the business district with a big triangle, and that actually I can see our area being a destination, especially with edible gardens also coming to bear fruit, so to speak, in our neighborhood. So there is a lot, and there's also a lot of historic homes. Some of the oldest buildings, in fact, one of the oldest buildings is right down there across from the railroad depot. So there's things we could do to really, I think, make that a destination. Maybe even farmers market could occasionally be down in our area by the park.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think people don't even want to look at it now with any aspect of putting something in there, because they can't overlook what they're seeing right now. Once they don't see that part of it, once it's cleaned up, once it's visible, I think there's going to be endless possibilities of people who are going to be very interested in this piece of property. Environment's tough to clean up. It's expensive. People don't have that in a budget starting a small business. But if they can get into something that somebody else can take care of and get it cleaned up, then they can start thinking about it and they can start dreaming. And I think there's going to be a lot of dreams on who wants that piece of property once you guys get it cleaned up and it's ready to go.
So we have only a few minutes left, and I just wanted to touch on what Chuck was talking about, the plan. The Montana Business Connection has proposed to go ahead and buy the Caird property, and Montana Business Connection is one of only 2 entities that can get brownfield cleanup funds right away to clean up the Caird property, demolish the buildings, clean it up for its current zoning. Its current zoning is business neighborhood. And the Helena City Commission will vote on this on February 24th, 6 p.m. Down at the City County building. MBAC has been looking at this for a while before I came on, but it just happened to be that things were lined up correctly. We had an appraisal done of the property, so we knew what the value was once it was cleaned up. And then we had a wonderful study that was done by the Tetra Tech Company, international engineering firm, about the environmental cleanup. And that's the sole and only goal of MBAC, is to clean up the property. And if the City Council votes favorably, we should be able to have the property, the old buildings demolished and cleaned up by October of 2014. And then it'll be open up for whatever kind of future development might occur. One of the things that is a possibility, I was talking with the United States Environmental Protection Agency, and that is that once Caird is a brownfield, that's what they're called, a polluted site, is cleaned up, the EPA calls that a catalytic event, where it would allow or become immediately eligible in that particular area for additional grant funds for an area-wide plan for that area. So some of the ideas like Rose had about a tourism activity, or maybe enhancing business activity, and even potentially dealing with the railroad down further on Montana Avenue, could be mitigated somehow. So that's what we're talking about again, is the demolishing and cleanup of the Caird property on the intersection of Montana Avenue and Highway 12. And I encourage you, if you're interested in this, to voice your opinion on February 24th, 6 p.m., City Council. And I'll leave any last words to my guests here from the neighborhood district.
You know, the most exciting thing that I can see is the time frame on this. It's hard to believe that you can look at a site like this, and within this year alone, it can be taken care of. And it can be a site that people will be happy to look at, rather than the eyesore that it is now. So that's the most important thing that I can see that I'm excited about.
Rose, got 25 seconds.
This has always been my idea, that it would take the whole city working together to make this happen. And I really thank you for making that possible for the whole city to make it happen.
Well, thank you very much for visiting us. I'm Chris Show from the Montana Business Connection. We're talking about the cleanup of the Caird property on Montana Avenue, and this will be on a vote for the City Commission on February 24th. I hope to see you there. Thank you.